with so far with four wonderful guests that we have this morning to talk about audience building. So here with me we have Michelle Su. Hi Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. We have Mina Abdul. Good morning, Mina.
Morning, Jose. Morning, guys.
We have Rebecca San. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, good morning. And we have Warren Schlesinger. Good morning, Warren. How are you?
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. So yeah, let's get started. So the purpose of this live stream is to help our audience to have experiences and have some theories on how they can build their audiences for their startups. So we are going to do a session in which each of us is going to share experiences or something that has been working for us in the past or that we know that works now or maybe doesn't work, but it's a kind of tip or advice for our audience on audience building because this is about audience building today. So let's go for it. Warren, do you want to be the first to start?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Um, if I understood, you wanted me to just say a word about my background, if that's correct.
Yes,
Um,
please.
I call myself the luckiest person in the world because my grandfather was a professor at Ohio State, along with a gentleman named Everett Rogers. Everett Rogers created the bell curve and coined the term early adopter. And I essentially grew up learning about the development of diffusion of innovations and how new products spread and how new adoptions become successful. And so I've been doing that since 1967. Along the way, I got a chance to co-create with my colleagues a thing called Crossing the Chasm. It's a thing we developed working in a consultancy in Silicon Valley called Regis McKenna. And together we worked with Jeff Moore, and we developed the Chasm framework and gave it to Jeff, and he wrote a book and popularized Crossing the Chasm. So I've been doing high tech startups for well over 30 years, and I've had a chance to work in many different industries. So the framework that I use and the one that I've seen that is successful really for actually both B2B and B2C, or that hybrid situation, which some people call B2B2C. The framework I like is called the infrastructure model, and I'm going to just share my screen real fast, if that's okay. And there it is, my entire screen. I'm going to share it. And hopefully this is visible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the way that I think about building an audience is really through the most powerful method possible, which is word of mouth. And any infrastructure, or in this case, I will say any industry, really any market segment, has this infrastructure where the company or the supplier is at the bottom and the prospective customers are at the top. And there are all kinds of different players in the market. Maybe some people would call this an ecosystem. We've always called it an infrastructure. So you've got your partners and existing customers and other types of groups, associations and suppliers and standards groups, and of course the media and analysts. And the thing that we've noticed is that 10% of an infrastructure will have a influence on the other 90%. And the key is to find the 10%, those who are in some way have much more influence. I call them gurus and luminaries. I don't like the word influencer too much because I think that that phrase has been distorted quite a bit. So that's the key right here. Maybe you'd call it a power broker, for example, somebody that everybody in the industry knows. And when you identify those people and then you give them the proper messaging, then they will start this process of word of mouth communication. They'll essentially help this process of taking your messages and allowing them to bubble up through the infrastructure. I was just working the other day with a company developing what are called medical wearables. This is for the prevention of heart problems. And we were talking about this, and they said, okay, so give me an example. So I simply went and found someone who was giving a talk at a conference, and this is a professor who is essentially a thought leader in the prevention of heart problems, or essentially they call it preventative cardiology, and using wearables to do that. So this person is an ideal influencer coming out of that layer that we called medical organizations. Now this infrastructure is specific to medical wearables, but that's the first step. This is what you want to do. You want to decide who is in my infrastructure and who are those people that are the top 10%. Some industries, especially B2C market spaces, have very crowded infrastructures, but you can still find the gurus and luminaries. This worked really well in venture capital. I helped a company start a new venture capital firm. We called it Hybrid Venture Capital, and it was hybrid because it was not only investment funds, it was localization of software. So if you were a software company, you would get funding. They would also take your software and translate it into Japanese so that you would have instant availability in Japan along with funding. So we knew that to be successful as a venture capital firm, you have to reach out to other VCs. You don't want to really go it alone because that's how they tend to do things. It's called safety in numbers. So we essentially identified the people in the venture capital infrastructure. We went and met and talked with many of the leading influencers in the VC community. We introduced them to our client. We talked all about the differences between traditional venture capital and hybrid, and the 50-50 offering of funds and services. And the unknown company called Encompass Group absolutely exploded in terms of success. They had, in their third year, they had 6 of their portfolio companies go public. 6 after just 3 years, and that's because they were able to become part of the deal flow. They were able to very quickly, through word of mouth communication, get their message, their differentiation in front of all of the people who have the loudest voice, and it just spread like wildfire, and they got to be part of the best deals because of that. I've done this in all types of industries, including hang gliding, if you can believe that. That's sports aviation, energy education, in manufacturing. It's all about identifying who's in your infrastructure, finding those people who are well known or have some position of influence over everyone else, and the word of mouth process is very impressive. Now, when you decide you're going to use this model, you can also essentially test its effectiveness from time to time, because you want every layer of the infrastructure to understand what it is your new product is all about, what your new service does, how you're different. You have a whole set of positioning messages you need to deliver to each and every layer, so that you want your customers to know when you are the best fit and when you're not. You want any activities in the press to absolutely reflect your competitive messaging and actually have examples to share. You want everyone in your infrastructure to see you as an expert. You want all of the influencers to have complete understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. You want people who are already customers to help you pass along word of mouth. And of course, you want your sales channels, your sales people to know exactly where to spend their time and what to say. So you've got really targets in every single layer. And I've seen this work fabulously well in any industry, B2B, B2C, the name doesn't really matter. We call it infrastructure marketing.
Thank you, Warren. Very briefly, one question before we jump to the next guest. Now, a lot of people in the startup ecosystem and in the, let's say, a lot of micro SaaS founders, they are talking about audience building first. In your opinion, it works better if you start working your audience before you start testing your idea, because even they can provide you ideas about future products. In your experience, works better to start before testing your idea, after you have kind of an MVP or something to test, or doing both at the same time?
Yes. So the answer is the exact same concept. That pyramid is a great market validation tool also, because even if you have no product, you just have an idea, maybe you have a technology and it's not even complete in any way, you still want to go out to that infrastructure, to every layer of the infrastructure. You want to identify who are the key players in that space and talk to them ahead of time. You may not have anything to show them at all, and they'll start to give you feedback. Well, here are the things you need to think about. Here are the other players in this space who are talking about doing things that are similar. It's a fabulous tool for not just building an audience and creating word of mouth communication. It's a fabulous tool for becoming part of an industry, encouraging people to talk about you, but also give you feedback in terms of what you need to do next, who you need to talk to, what you need to change. It's an extremely powerful model, and it really doesn't matter where you are in your journey. It's the one that I always recommend.
Thank you, Warren. So let's jump to the next guest today, Michelle. Michelle, what do you have for us, for our audience?
Hi, everybody.
Audience building.
I'll spend just 2 minutes on my background, and then I want to jump to what I'm hearing from. I'm getting an echo. Is that me? I want to jump to what I'm hearing from makers and entrepreneurs and startups and what they're seeing in their audience building. And then I want to end with a couple of tactics that you can do today. Things after this webinar that you can just go do these 3 things and see how it works out for you. And I also have 5 tools that I want to share with you on audience building that will hopefully help you. So real quick background on me. I have like 20 plus years of marketing. I started out in math and computer science and IT. So I've got a little bit of technical background, and I ended up as head of marketing after 20 years. And I love the growing and the scaling of small business. And some of the things that audience building things that I've done over the years, it's been pretty diverse. I did customer building and audience segmentation kind of the old-fashioned way with catalogs and direct mail and coupons for people like Toys R Us. And even though you don't think of that as audience building, because it's not social media, it's audience building. It's finding people and building your customer base and loyalty by meeting their needs. So retail, I've done business software for engineers and developers in an entrepreneurial bootstrap scenario, which was extremely difficult because we had no money. So there are different techniques used for that. I did some audience building for a specialty finance company who catered to lottery winners. And that had its own unique challenges because you had an audience who they were a needle in a haystack, not a lot of lottery winners in the United States. They were not self-referencing. It's not like there's a club of lottery winners, and they really don't want to be known. They want to hide out and, not make it public that they just won $1 million. So that had its own unique challenges. And I also did audience building for real estate private lending with small business for fix and flip loans. And the challenge there was to only attract the investors and not homeowners. And that was challenging in and of itself because you could get homeowners who want to renovate a kitchen. That wasn't our market. We wanted to find individual investors who are looking to purchase a home, fix it up, and sell it. So a lot of different things that I've experienced in. My current state is I'm trying to build my own audience, and that's very new for me to market myself, build my own audience. And my audience is sort of at the intersection of marketing and technology and growth. And I started a Twitter account, and I'm trying to focus on one platform. And I started in mid-July with 0 followers, and it's just me. And I'm slowly building an audience, and I'm over almost 3 months. I have 370. And it's a fairly linear growth and haven't really hit an exponential growth yet. And it's a lot of effort and a lot of engagement, but I'm meeting some awesome people and learning a whole new set of skills by going and doing that. So that's my background. One thing I just wanted to share real quick is I did a little Twitter poll yesterday and wanted to ask people, where are you in your audience building? And this was targeting indie hackers, SaaS founders, no-code folks who are looking to build an app. And I got 100 people to answer, and 20% are building their product first before they build an audience. 27% are building an audience first before they build a product. And 50% are doing both at the same time. And 3% have no plans to build an audience, which is kind of interesting, which actually I would have answered that if I were and starting to build a product. I'd say, I'm not going to build an audience. And why do I say that? Because my focus has always been on funnel, lead generation, right? Getting people who are ready to buy and putting ads and PPC and identifying folks who are at the purchase point, right? That too is audience building, right? But I would not have thought that. I would have put that in a different bucket. So I just find it interesting that if you've built your product first and you don't have an audience and everybody's saying, oh, you need to build an audience first, don't freak out. It's not the end of the world. A lot of people do that. It's okay. One of the things that I'm learning is what everybody has a different definition for what an audience is, right? Or what audience building is. Some people think it's sales, right? And some people think it's building a huge social media presence. And it's depends on what your goal is and where you are in your journey, right? So let me jump to, where are my notes? I don't want to get lost here. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't read Crossing the Chasm, go get that book. It's a fairly easy read. It's a classic marketing book, and it still applies today, particularly to app development and developers. Go get the book. You will not be disappointed. All right, let's see here.
Maybe Warren, you should read it. Warren. I strongly encourage you.
Yeah, I still have the original manuscripts, and it's full of errors.
I would love to see that. I would buy that off of you. It was one of the books that I used. My dad started a software company. He was very entrepreneurial, and we went to launch his software product, which was a Warnior diagrammer. It was for engineers to do structured development. And we read that book, and it just helped us so much not to realize you had to be everything to everybody, right? You focus on your early adopters and your influencers that you're talking about, and you make headway there before you move on to the next thing. And that's very applicable to what people are doing today. All right, so I just want to give you some actionable tactics, things you can do today. Go do these things, okay? And this is related to this one about social media and building your audience on social media. Go find somebody with about 500 to 5,000 followers, okay, who are in your audience or whose followers are in your audience, okay? Turn on notifications. Do you know how to do that in Twitter? You can turn on notifications so you get a notice whenever they tweet. And every time they tweet, be the first one to engage with it. Reply, retweet, like it, right? And you're going to find that engagement is going to help you get followers, okay? Don't do it for someone with like 1 million followers, right? Do it sort of that mid-level influencer. They're going to engage with you, their followers will engage with you, and then you're going to start conversations and get more followers that way. That's one thing you can do. Second thing you can do today, direct message one person. And I know, like for me, this is way out of my comfort zone to reach out to somebody directly. DM one person and ask for their feedback on your landing page or your product, or tweet something and say, I would love your input on this tweet. I would love to hear what you have to say. 9 times out of 10, they're going to engage with you, and you're going to start a wonderful connection. People have reached out to me directly, and I always respond, and it's very flattering frankly, to have somebody reach out and say, hey, I see you're in growth marketing. Can you take a look at this thing for me? But I will always do that. And when I realize that I feel good when people reach out to me, that helps me feel good about reaching out to other people and not being scared to do that. Okay. And then I'm going to give you one more thing. The third thing I want you to think about is for your next step. I've noticed a lot of makers are very involved in Product Hunt and indie hackers. Get out of that group and go somewhere else and try and find an audience, because it becomes self-referencing, right? It's like marketing to yourself. So try and find an audience for your product outside of developers. And there are ways to do that. You can use this tool called Syften, Syften, where you can put in a query and it will monitor the leading communities and social channels on the web and give you notifications on when someone is talking about the problem that your product solves. It's a great tool. It monitors Reddit and everywhere where people are talking. So try Syften, okay? Try SparkToro, SparkToro, which will allow you to research hashtags and audiences and follower demographics. And the third tool I'm going to recommend is hypefury.io, and this is tweet scheduling, evergreen tweets, auto replies, and it really helps you develop an audience on Twitter. So that is my audience spiel.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Very, very interesting. I really love the SparkToro tool. I didn't know all the other tools, so a lot of
I'll drop. I have like 5 tools and some. I'll drop them in the Growth Seeker community. I'll also tweet them after this is over, so you guys can have a reference for those.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. By the way, all of you, we can do our kind of regular sessions like we do every day. So we talk with each other. So if somebody has a question for another guest while the other guest is speaking, let's do it. I mean, that way is more dynamic, the session too, I think, and then we can benefit more.
In my case, it's not a question. It's just a comment to your what you said, Michelle, about building your own audience, because we are always focused on building audience for our products, and we sometimes forget to build audience for ourselves. So I didn't start it. I have not started. Somehow I'm kind of afraid of that. So I would love to learn that.
I'm with you. It's horrifying. It is. But to be honest, once you get started and put yourself out there, the feedback you get from the community has been so positive and so fulfilling, particularly when you are helping other people. I absolutely love that. And I'm sad I didn't start sooner. So I'm really enjoying it.
I just wanted to say thank you because you make me start thinking about it.
So thank you so much, Michelle. Let's jump to the next guest, Mina. Are you ready? Oh yeah, I think he disconnected and connected again. Mina, can you hear me?
Hello? Hey, Jose,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry,
perfectly.
my computer's been having connection issues. I was
No
just
worries.
backstage waving at you for a little bit.
Yeah. We're gonna
so
take
I'm
profit
just
to. Sorry, we're gonna take profit to welcome Jesus too, because he was here waiting. Hi, Jesus. Welcome. And Mark, by the way, welcome to the session. 2 of our
I made it.
guests. Thank you. So yeah, Mina, all yours. Go for it, please.
Perfect. So I'm just going to take a minute to talk about my background as a marketer, as an advertiser, and then I'm going to touch on essentially how I built my audience for my startup essentially, and it's going to be points that are focused mainly towards people that are just starting out that don't necessarily have the experience in marketing and advertising and audience building that really need to focus on these basic foundational points that I found really helped me out. So a little bit about me: I am a serial marketer, entrepreneur, and devil's advocate. I am like a hole punch. I love poking holes in people's ideas. It's something that I think is crucial to building a startup and building it well, because a lot of people find the positives in a startup, but try not to look at the negatives. And I think they're just as important, if not more important, than the positive points of a startup. So I've been on the scene for around 4 or 5 years doing advertising, doing marketing. My first startup was a broad spectrum digital marketing agency, and I something Michelle said resonated with me, and it is be everything to everybody, and that was essentially what we were. We didn't really think about our audience when we first started this digital marketing agency. We had the experience, me and my business partner, doing digital marketing, so we knew how to run PPC ads, how to do SEO, how to do social media management, and we said, well, hey, let's turn this into a company. And what we didn't think of was scalability. So we started a company that offered all of these different services. So like social media marketing, PPC ads, pretty much everything that falls under the umbrella of digital marketing. And then we thought, okay, so let's find people that we can do digital marketing for. And we didn't really narrow down an audience. So every single industry, every single company, mobile application, you name it, we were going out to them and saying, hey, let's do your digital marketing for you. On the back end, it was just us, a couple of guys. And so that was our first problem, is we didn't really think about our audience when we built this product. And very quickly we realized it was not scalable because we didn't have, VC funding or investors that were backing us. And for you to be able to build this infrastructure bootstrapped was nearly impossible. So we kind of took a step back and reassessed everything. And now we have a second startup, which is Advertex, which is a user acquisition startup that focuses on early stage business to consumer mobile application based tech startups. That mouthful is our audience. And the fact that we managed to narrow it down so much has really helped us with our messaging and how we reach out to these people. So first and foremost, I believe that you have to know your audience. For you to be able to build an audience, you have to know who they are. And that is intrinsically tied to your value proposition. So for us, it was helping out this specific audience build a user base, because we noticed that this specific audience, the early stage application based B2C tech startup, had two problems. That was they didn't have the time and they didn't have the money or resources to really focus on user acquisition. And so we thought to ourselves, let's be their outsourced team of experts that focuses on their user acquisition efforts so that they can then focus on the important thing, which is building a solid product. And that's how we essentially got started with Advertex. So the first point was to know your audience, figure out, who they are, figure out who you are and what problem you're trying to solve for them. And once you kind of narrow down your value proposition and what problem you're solving, it's going to be significantly easier for you to build an audience, because you then know exactly what value you're providing and how you're going to be helping this audience and who they are. And step number 2 is essentially find your tilt. Find your unique selling point. What makes you uniquely valuable to your customers? So for all of your outreach efforts, whether it's, marketing on social media or you're doing email marketing or word of mouth, you need to make your value clear to your customers and put that at the forefront of your marketing efforts or your acquisition efforts, your audience building efforts. And for us, our value proposition was that we could acquire users for these startups for $0 down and at a results-based pricing system that works for them. Because if you're a startup, a mobile app startup, and you want to build an audience, your options are, number 1, you go to a marketing agency, but they charge a lot of money and there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of time wasted. Number two, you hire an in-house team, which isn't necessarily feasible for a startup that is bootstrapped, for you to hire, train, bring these people on board, and then have them doing the work for you. Or number three, you go with freelancers, and it's iffy because you can't necessarily guarantee the work that they're doing. And so our unique selling point was that we will be your outsourced team of experts. We're charging you $0 down, and it's a results-based pricing system that works for them. And the third point is focus on where your audience is. So do a lot of research, and that was one of the most time-consuming processes for us. So what we mainly did for Advertex was we used Crunchbase, and Crunchbase is an absolutely amazing tool. We went on there, and there's a query builder that allows you to filter companies based on specific criteria, which was immensely helpful for us. So we started out by filtering based on mobile app companies, and then based on companies that have a certain amount of funding, so $0 to $500,000. People with employees that range between 0 to 10 employees. And so we narrowed it down as much as we possibly could so that we found people that specifically fit within our audience. And we didn't, revert back to our original problem of be everything to everybody. So you really need to do a lot of research on where your target audience is. SparkToro also is extremely helpful for that, like Michelle was saying. And number 4, tailor your approach to where your audience is. So if they're on Instagram and you're doing social media marketing, then use the right hashtags, follow the right people, engage with the right type of audience. If they're on LinkedIn, then you need to build a network of connections and post consistently. The problem with LinkedIn is there's just a lot of noise, and your message can get lost in there. If you're selling a physical product, then do influencer marketing on YouTube. I was talking to Jesus about this. Maybe do some guerrilla marketing. There's a million different ways for you to tailor your approach to the platform of your choice, but it's very, very important that you message the audience consistently. So you want to really, really focus down on one message that revolves around your value proposition, and then pump that out as much as you can. And step number 5 is just produce. So just keep pumping out that messaging. Put in a lot of effort. It's going to be, one of the most time-consuming processes for you. For us, it was finding the people on Crunchbase, taking those people, finding them on LinkedIn, getting those emails, sending them a lot of messages, building an entire cadence so that we have multiple touch points. Step number 1, find them on Crunchbase. Step number 2, find them on LinkedIn. Step number 3, connect on LinkedIn. Step number 4, send them an email. Step number 5, follow up after a couple days. So it's a long process of trial and error and A/B testing. But the bottom line is, no matter what you're doing, be consistent with your messaging. And those 5 steps have really helped me build my audience for Advertex, as well as provide advice to all the other founders and startups that I've been working with. It's just a matter of trial and error, but first and foremost, focus on your value proposition. Make that the forefront of your outreach efforts, and then do a lot of research on where your audience is, figure out what platforms they're on, tailor your approach to those platforms, and then just consistently produce. That's pretty much the strategy that I've gone with, and it's a strategy that's been working substantially well for me and all the startups that I've been working with.
Thank you, Ina. So great advices and tips for B2B, in this case, audience building. We've got so far general audience building by Warren. Then we've got personal audience building, right, from Michelle. And now we've been talking about B2B audience building, so that's great. We're just missing the B2C, right? I hope that some of our guests, probably Mark and Jesus, they can talk a little bit more about B2C, so we can have the complete spectrum of different audiences and businesses. So let's go quickly for our next guest. Rebecca, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit more on how do you build your audience?
Yes, I want to go ahead. I'm going to keep talking about B2B before B2C. So I'm going to support some Nina's thoughts. But first of all, hello everybody. I'm going to briefly introduce myself, but if I only had like one sentence for define myself and to talk something about me, I would say that I am a people person oriented, and I love to contact and interact with others. So if you're like me, the social distancing is somehow killing us softly, as the song used to say. But anyway, by training, I am a pharmacist and dietitian, so I entered the world of healthcare very, very early. I decided to take my next step in my professional career by pursuing an MBA and being more on the part of the business. But I started my career as a clinician. I dedicated to teams designing nutrition programs to improve patient health issues, one patient at a time, which was kind of unproductive, but it's the way that it's usually be done. After this, I work with a very innovative pharma company in an effort to transform the national health system. It was a huge commitment by improving access to care in the community that we usually serve. And after 9 years of doing that, we moved to the US, and currently I'm connecting the dots from health and tech, trying to elevate somehow the human condition, implementing cloud-based platforms to digitally transform clinical trials. So I can say that I'm in the clinical trials environment, and my whole career has been in healthcare in different kind of models. Caring is a word that has resonated very consistently in my career during this past more than 15 years journey. And I think that's the reason why I joined in the first place the healthcare setting, and also why I'm passionate about uncovering what customers really want, behaviors, and the relationship between the things they do and why they do these things. No? So, as I was saying at the beginning, I am right now in the B2B healthcare software industry space. And I recently joined a team of one, which is myself. And by recently, I mean in February. And I joined as the starter of the sales and marketing department in a small company in Seattle, here in the Washington State. So the product was already developed. The product was already in the market. We provide software. We provide a SaaS solution for the remote and decentralized management of clinical trials, which is especially relevant now that almost any patient is attending to a doctor appointment globally, unless it's critical. So, as a sales and marketing responsible, everything needs to be done. So, among other things, back in February, I asked myself, okay, Rebecca, you're joining a team yourself. Marketing has been, well, everything related to the approach to the customer has never been done in the way that you have in your mind. So the first question for me was, where is my audience here, and how I can make it, how can I value this audience, and how can I make it grow? Why they care about us? What do we have that they really need, and which problem are we trying to solve them really in a unique way? So to start solving that, I decided to start formal and informal rounds of interview and doing some research with some of our existing users, which, as Warren, you mentioned, they join our brand, mainly most of them because word of mouth and referrals. So these interviews allowed me to know what they really care and why. After not so many time, I decided to focus in three main areas for keep building and maintaining the current audience. And after trying to find different things, I think that I can summarize these initiatives into three areas. Like connection, improving connection, collaboration, and last one, but not less difficult, creating a community. So by connection, I mean reaching a new audience, using and knowing where my audience is. I know you are listening to me because suddenly you have stopped. I'm not hearing background noise, but I guess that, thanks, Jose. I guess you're hearing me. So first of all, by improving connections with our current base, but we decide to jump, or I decide to jump in a new space for us, which was pushing ourselves out as a thought leaders in the small niche that we play. So we also started with some social media presence, mainly LinkedIn, since after using some of the tools that you mentioned, Michelle, is where we show that our audience was not only there but active, which for me was a change in the mindset, because yes, my audience is in LinkedIn, for example, but they are active, which is probably as important, that they are not only reading but also sharing content. Another pillar for us was, or it's been, collaboration, by trying to find partners and trying to expand our brand awareness. We are a very, very small company, so this is a huge effort for us. And I mentioned at the beginning that community and the sense of belonging it's also one of our main focus areas. So this has been really difficult as for Growth Seeker to create a community, but we are doing that by creating and reinforcing our current users to collaborate and share in a similar way that we are doing here. And we are seeing a lot of improvements and a lot of good things happening within this community. And Mina, you said one very, very true things, and we, after all this talking about customers, with customers trying to know what they really care about, we realized that our value proposition was not very aligned to what our audience values. So I revisited the value proposition, as well as the way we were communicating who we were. We ran some, or I ran. I'm always trying to say we, but as I said at the beginning, it's a team of myself. But anyway, it's always a teamwork. So I decided to run some branding workshop based on a sprint methodology. It was difficult to overcome some cultural barriers about the benefit of doing these kind of workshops and methodology, I have to say, but it ended up to be very productive, and everybody saw the results of doing these sprint branding workshops. But anyway, after all this, my goal is still getting to know better my audience and keep trying to find more potential leads or customers to talk. Talking with them offers me qualitative insights from the mind of my users or potential users, and I can learn they reach me, what they like, what they don't like about our outbound service, and many things. So when you know what makes your audience tick, which is probably one of the reasons why we all are here, you can use this to inform your product and marketing efforts, and it's very productive. So it's my speech, let's say, is quite different compared to probably to some of you as a founders and trying to find new audience. Mine was also already also there, but still I was struggling to okay, where are you guys? I need to talk to you.
Thanks, Rebecca, for sharing your thoughts regarding B2B enterprise audience building. Key point talking about partnerships. I think that is a really valid point, and probably we can further develop to talk more about partnerships in next sessions. So really good ideas in this session to have more sessions and dig deeper on some of your points. Thank you, Rebecca. Let's jump to the next guest today. Mark, how are you?
How about a sound test? Can everybody hear me?
Perfectly. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, good morning. Sorry I was late. See the last thread in the email about the new web link there, but it worked great. I guess there's a few new people, but I'll give you a very quick overview of how I met Jose and got here. I am an angel investor, so the financial analyst side of things. I worked for an airline for many years and retired just recently. But it's interesting. I've always been interested in this. I used to subscribe to like Success. I get Forbes and Barron's, and I just love reading about the world and economy and how capital flows from across borders, within borders, and how people make a living. And probably about 20 years ago, I just was daydreaming one day, and I thought, if I had $1 million, I'd go down to the University of Washington. This is about when the internet was starting, and set up a little booth and say, "Bring me your ideas." Have a big banner up there, and try to analyze who had the best ideas and invest in them. And here I am today, having done that. I guess that was latent dream that actually somehow came to fruition. But I met Arian and Vanessa, who have started a e-commerce real estate company called NextMe. And not knowing anything about marketing, about startups, I know the language. Michelle, I went out, one of the first books I bought was Crossing the Chasm. I probably have 25 books now from, Andreessen Horowitz, David Rose, Angel Investing, everything I get my hands on. And so we were talking about marketing today. About 6 months ago, I went out and bought this book, Traction, which is good for startups, founders, me who have to be kind of a generalist to understand what's going on. But I don't really have a marketing pitch, but I can tell you what NextMe is doing. And I ask these questions all the time. Why are we doing this and what are we doing? And everybody's had some great things. Starting with Mina, finding a unique selling point. I think we've done that. And our marketing director, who's a co-founder, Vanessa, is a big tweeter. She has, I think, 12,000 followers now. And she is using that, leveraging that all the time, almost every day. And she's trying to engage and build an audience to actually, I think, lay that network on top of people that might be home buyers and sellers. So what we have emphasized as our main selling points is in buying and selling real estate, instant tour, make an offer, and cash back. Those three things. And that's what keeps coming out over and over and over again, the value-added propositions and how it makes us unique and different. She has gone out and used LinkedIn, and so has Arian as far as recruiting people. Those are the two big platforms. And Michelle, you mentioned, and also Rebecca, about creating a community and engaging, not only just following, but engaging. And I've noticed how she uses LinkedIn because I follow her. She will engage immediately people she likes and follows. Bill Gurley is one of her contacts, and they have this conversation going back and forth all the time. And I would say they're Twitter friends, but that's an important connection because he's a B2C guy. I'm sure you guys have all heard of him. But so she leverages that. They don't spend much time in indie hacks and developer arena, although they have been there. And probably the main issue, the main hurdle we have right now is actually finding our audience, and that's tough. So we've figured there's 6 million transactions that occur every year in real estate. About 1.5 million are new home buyers, and the other 3.5 to 4.5 are homes that have already been built, and they're used, but they're from buyer to seller that way. And finding those 6 million people is tough in a country of 330 million. So we are still experimenting right now. We have some capital. This next capital we've received from another angel investor is going to be primarily focused on marketing, and the avenues, the traction channels we're going to use are basically social media, SEO. We're working on that. That's actually our back-end guys are trying to do it themselves. But we've hired a PR, public relations person as a consultant, and she's had us change our content marketing, which is our blog. She didn't like any of it, so the team has been rewriting that, almost a total rewrite, to make it easier for our consumer audience to understand what we're trying to do. We have, I'm just going through the traction book here. A couple of things that, as an engineer, I thought, why don't we connect some, I didn't know what it was called, but it's called Engineering as Marketing, create a tool, rent versus buy, and also, should I refinance? And our folks are working on those tools to connect and put on our mobile app site as a way to draw people in to the landing page and find out if they want to learn about refinancing, or should I buy versus rent. That would link them next to me. The other thing we've been doing is business development. And basically trying to co-brand ourselves, no exchange of money. Excuse me. So in the Seattle market, we have linked up with a mortgage company called Absolute Mortgage. And in the Boston market, which we'll be rolling out in a couple of weeks, Aaron and Vanessa found a mortgage company out there. And then a nationwide startup called Better.com we're in negotiations with them to co-brand. We're going to actually take their co-brand and put it on our site. And whether that's going to happen both ways, we don't know yet. So the business development, the BD portion is slowly developing, and hopefully we'll have a revenue source from those people down the line. Everything from home inspectors to mortgage companies, escrow companies, things like that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. What I've learned from all of you has been incredible. It really helps me understand kind of the general idea of what we're trying to do. But trying to find the market is difficult when we don't have. I think we can scale to a certain level, but it's not going to be like Uber, where we're going to have 30 million people with the app on their phone. But it's doable. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be fun trying to figure out how to do it. So.
Thank you, Mark, for a different perspective. In this case, how nextme.com applies all the, let's say, tips that we've been talking here, but not only that, their double approach, because Nextme is, they need a double approach, right? A B2B approach for the realtors and a B2C, approach to attract the consumer to their apps, and finally, putting in touch the realtor with the consumer. So a little bit more trickier than the usual business that we're used to, because they are a platform that puts together both B2B and B2C, and that's really interesting. Thank you, Mark, for your time.
You're welcome.
And now let's jump to Jesus, our final guest today. Jesus, how are you? Can you hear us? We can't hear you. I unmuted you, but We cannot hear you. Try now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now perfectly.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
Welcome, Jesus. How are you today?
Thank you.
What do
Doing
you have
good,
for
thank you.
us?
Yeah, so I want to talk about a little bit more on the B2B side. In my last role, that's what I was doing. I started off doing B2C sales, but quickly transitioned to B2C. I was working at an early stage fintech startup, so we had to wear a lot of hats, and that's the role that I took on. And I really helped with the channel distribution. So some of the things that I did was reach out and find new partners. And it was very beneficial because as a new fintech startup, it gave us a lot of credibility within that community. So we would reach out to mortgage brokers and a lot of people in the home improvement space, so contractors, and basically sign them on as partners and have them send their referrals over to us. Now, through that, I learned a lot. One of the most important things is obviously to be concise in your value proposition and tailor it to the person that you're talking to. What I really love about B2B is that it's a very dynamic relationship. If you're talking to one person at one company, you might mention certain aspects of what you're doing and what you can offer them versus another person. One thing that I'm really big on is finding the champion, someone to champion within an organization. So what we were selling was an expensive, new, kind of complicated solution for homeowners. So one of the first things I'd do is find the people that were most interested in what we're doing, the representatives within those companies that would refer the most homeowners, and really champion for them. Anytime that I could, I would acknowledge their efforts, thank them, and not just privately, but in front of their peers, their supervisors, just to make sure that everyone knows that they're doing something good. And then those people would go and champion for us within their organization. Another thing, for example, that I learned was to, like I said, tailor it to the person you're talking to. If I'm talking to a CFO, I'm going to tell him how we can bring new revenue at no extra cost and no risk to them. If I'm talking to the CEO, I might tell them how we would only work with their turndowns, with the people they decline, and it wouldn't conflict with the offerings they already had. So that helped get my foot in the door. Now, specifically, what I'm doing now is I'm selling T-shirts, but with a social, around a social issue with social impact. And it's still using a lot of the things that I've been there. So one of my biggest strategies is to work with community leaders and small businesses in the Latino community. When I started, I'm doing mainly Instagram. So when I started my account a month and a half ago, obviously 0 followers. So one thing that I started doing was resharing, reposting a lot of things that small businesses were putting out. And that was my foot in the door to start a relationship with them, and then I can reach out to them. And one thing that I found has a really high success rate when I reach out to these people is making a small video. So I might send them a message, a DM, an email, but I also send them a video basically recapping what I'm saying. That puts a face to the message, and it customizes it. If I know I have information on them, which I normally do, or the names, it's all in the video, and I think I have like 100%, at least an open rate, and like an 80% response rate. So it's been very, very helpful, very promising results. And one thing too, when you talk to your audience, I like to get validation. So I don't just ask them what their pain points are. I ask for some kind of commitment, preferably buy, but it depends on what you're doing. So when I was working with mortgage brokers and contractors, one of the last projects that I had was kind of a market research task where we're calling hundreds of contractors and basically creating a new financial product that didn't exist yet, but we were to take that information and take it to some banks and credit union partners that we had so that we can make that product. Now, when I was calling these contractors, instead of just giving them a phone call where they can vent to me, I took the top 3 things pain points that they were telling me. After talking to about 100 of them, I started using those 3 pain points, and I would pitch our solution around those 3 pain points to a new subset cohort of contractors that I would talk to and ask them to sign up to validate whether or not that's something that would drive these partnerships. And sure enough, if I could get someone on the phone that was a decision maker, there was more than a 50% chance that I would sign them up as a partner. So then we were able to take that validation and take it to our co-founder, and then he was able to make sure that those benefits were included in the negotiations with our finance partners.
Thank you, Jesus. So you're leveraging a lot, building a partnership ecosystem to reach out your audience, right?
Right.
That's your main strategy. That's good. We've been talking about several different ways to build and reach out our audiences, and that's what the goal today. So we still have 20 minutes ahead. We don't have any questions through the chat. So I think that we can probably brainstorm together or just launch questions to each other, or just share more thoughts that probably we've been having during this conversation. So if anybody wants to share something else, now is the time, or if anybody wants to ask any questions to one of our fellow guests here, now is the time. If somebody is ready to go? Maybe Rebecca? Everybody's in mute, so the ones who want to talk should unmute yourself.
I think Michelle does.
Sorry?
I think Michelle does.
Michelle has both their hands up.
Okay, yeah. You are unmute now.
Jose,
Michelle, you want to go ahead? Yeah.
I want Jose to talk about his guerrilla marketing a little bit more.
Sorry?
I want Jose to talk about his guerrilla marketing tactics a little bit more.
About Growth Seeker?
No, Jose has done some guerrilla marketing.
Jose or Jesus?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Jesus.
Yes. So the guerrilla marketing that I'm going to be doing, there's a lot of delays with. So like I said, I make t-shirts, and getting that done right now, it's killing me. There's a lot of delays. But some of the simple stuff that obviously would be make stickers, plaster them. So I made one. I ordered a bunch of them where I have a QR code for my Instagram. So I'm going to go put them in places where I know my audience hangs out. I was in LA last week, and I talked to someone that recently launched a consignment luxury streetwear store, very affluent area too, right outside Calabasas. And one thing that I'm going to do is he basically gave me a space in his store to set up shirts for a collaboration that him and I are working on. And I'm going to put up a little display never done that. It's, obviously, you know, I'm going from fintech to selling clothes, but have stuff that people can interact with, more QR codes, free stickers, labels. Another thing that I was doing too is I would order extra samples, and I would go to my local, not Safeway, like Salvation Army kind of stores, and I would donate a few shirts, and I would handwrite a tag, and I'd put it on the shirt, letting people know who I am, and to give us a follow and shout out on Instagram whenever they purchase the shirts. So that created a lot of goodwill within my existing followers, community, and it's helped.
I love that, Jesus. I love that. And it just goes to show that audience building is more than just online, right? I know it's hard with the quarantine and COVID right now. Everything's kind of locked in, but the fact that you're out in the community is amazing. And I think you're going to get a lot of traction from that. Sorry, I called you Jose. I had Jose in my in my window. Early, sorry.
In your Twitter.
Goodwill. Goodwill, that's where I donate. Goodwill in San Jose.
Yeah. So thank you. More questions? I think Warren has something to say. Warren.
So I'll start out with a fun item here, Michelle. This is the original transcript of Crossing the Chasm.
No
Oh
way.
my God.
And, look at
Screenshotting that. Hold on.
and look at all look at all my notes here, all the mistakes that Jeff made, and we had to try to correct, and it was So this is a museum piece right here.
I love it.
You can sell it and retire.
I love it. I love it.
Can someone say eBay?
So the comment I want to make regarding Jesus, which is and I think this is fascinating, is if you look at the risk associated with what's being offered, it makes a big difference in terms of how people accept your message, how you build your audience. On the first hand, Jesus, you were talking about financial technology. If you think about the risk associated with that, it's big. Someone can someone can basically make a mistake in financial technology and lose a lot of their investments. That's a high risk proposition. On the other hand, if you think about T-shirts, if you buy a T-shirt or you are engaged in using a T-shirt and it doesn't work out for you, well, you've just lost a small amount of money. So the risk differential is a huge factor in how you build an audience, communicate what your messages are. You think about it, if you wanted to find a heart surgeon, if you had a heart problem, you needed a heart surgeon, you're not going to go to Twitter. I mean, I wouldn't think you'd go to Twitter and say, hey, tell me who I should go and have my heart fixed, because the outcome is so horrendously bad, because there's the credibility on social media is not the same as say the program here in the Northwest called Top Docs, where doctors vote on who it is the best in their field. So keep that risk differential in mind. And then, of course, Mina talking about positioning messages being complete is absolutely important, because there are different messages appeal to different audiences, and you have to have that in line. So anyhow, Juan, when did you review the book? Well, I was one of the original creators of the Chasm concept. This was in 1989. We created the Chasm concept. Jeff Moore was one of our colleagues, and we decided we needed someone to write about the thing that we had created here in the Pacific Northwest. So basically, I had to teach Jeff Moore what the chasm was, and then help him write the book. So it was in 1989.
Thank you, because that answers both questions, right? From Juan. He was asking which audience is more loyal, the one created through Twitter, LinkedIn, where I think that we answered those questions. Thanks for the questions, Juan. Somebody of our guests wants to add something else. Here we have Mark.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Mark.
That's okay. Hey, Jesus,
Thank you,
I was
Mark.
curious if you can explain a little more detail. You said you use SEO to approach potential customers with an 80% response rate. You'd follow up with that. Could you just explain that a little more in depth? So you'd make contact with them, obviously, with a phone call, email, and then you would send this video as a DM to them. How long?
Right.
Save. That sounds 80% response rate is huge.
Right. Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I listened to a lot of podcasts and can't remember which one. I'm pretty sure it was a sales podcast. But someone was talking about using that, I think in real estate or lending. So it was a really professional setting where they would send emails and record themselves and kind of put the video at the top of the email with the bot, with exactly what was in the email, basically. So make it real easy for the person to digest the information. So I took that idea and on Instagram, that's where I started. So it lends itself perfectly. It is a communication tool. So yeah, first I'll start liking, if I find that someone, a business or a leader, like an angel investor that I might want to talk to, I will stalk them on LinkedIn, on Twitter, wherever I can find them, and then reach out on Instagram. So I'll like their stuff, I'll comment on their posts, react to their stories. So typically this is a couple days in the making. And then if they acknowledge me, then I typically will make a quick mock-up of what I think their message, their goal is on a t-shirt, and I'll send it to them along with the video. Try not to make it too long, as short as possible. But hey, Jose, I really like what you're doing. Specifically, I heard the podcast you were on with this person. I really resonate with blah, blah, blah. I went ahead and I sent you a mock-up of a shirt. I was inspired by what you said. If you like it, let me know and let's talk sometime. And then people will typically DM me back like, oh, this is really cool, or can you change this? And then it starts a conversation that way.
Mm-hmm. That's not only clever, but brilliant, I think. That's great. People respond to, you're talking to somebody, you see facial expression, passion, things like that.
Exactly.
And the other question I had for you, Jesus, was you talked about pain points. Is that something you just brought out directly and said, hey, how can we make this better? How do you actually ask people about their pain points? Just
yeah. So in the context of my last role, basically a co-founder came up to me and a couple of other people on the team and said, hey, we're going to launch this new home equity line of credit specifically for people with AA plus credit, and we're tailoring it to contractors. Here's a list of contractors. Call them and figure out what benefits are most important to them. So it's kind of vague. So when we started calling, my point of contention, my reservation, my fear was that these people were just going to vent, and they were doing just that, right? Like I'd reach out, hey, Mark, this is Jesus, calling from Point, doing a little bit of market research on this new HELOC that we're launching. Do you guys do a lot of that? And then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would ask them up front, like what kind of financing do you guys do? What do you hate about it? What do you like about the lender you're using most right now? And there were 3 things that were coming up most often. One of them was dealer fees. So then fees that they would get charged that then they would pass on to their customers. Slow times in getting approval or declines. So they want to know as soon as possible whether someone qualifies or not. And then time to fund. So they want obviously the money as fast as possible. And that was across at least 100 contractors. So then I took that and I said, okay, if this is really what these people want, the next people that I talk to should be able to, or should be willing to sign up. And yeah, sure enough, they did. And so then I was able to take that information to our co-founder and relay it to him. And then they started working on it with our bank and credit union partners.
Fantastic. Thank you. Those good how-tos.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So before we leave, we have still 7 minutes ahead. We've been, let's say, mixing both kind of approach to audience building and to different audiences, even 3, right? B2B, B2C, and then a personal approach in the case of Michelle, how to build your personal audience. I'm launching here, putting into the table one question for all of you, for our guest today, is regarding what would you say are the main differences at the time to build an audience, B2B versus B2C? And what would be different in the approach? Let's talk a little bit about B2B versus B2C.
I just want to touch on that. I think, as opposed to the differences between the approach, we can all agree that there's some unchanging, consistent similarities between your approach. So no matter what your value proposition is or who your company's main audience is, B2B, B2C, B2B to C to B2C, all that matters is that there's a few initial steps that are going to be the same, and then it's going to change depending on whether you are B2B or B2C. So number one, know yourself, is know your value proposition, know what problem your company is trying to solve, and know who is having these problems. That, I think, is unchanging, whether it's B2B, B2C, or whatever variation of that. And know your unique selling points. So what makes you valuable? That's the step number one. Step number two, I think, is going to be unchanging, along with step number 3, which is doing a lot of research on your clients' pain points, your potential audiences' pain points, what they're struggling with, and how your value proposition is going to solve that. Where I think it splits is essentially tailoring the approach to where your audience is. So if you're B2B, your approach is going to be different from whether you're B2C. So for example, Jesus was saying he was doing fintech, and now he's in B2C. He's selling consumer products, and there's a huge split or differentiation in terms of his approach. But before he got to that step, those first initial processes were the same. And then that fourth step of figure out where your audience is and tailor your approach to that audience, that's where the differentiation is going to come in. And then, depending on where your audience is, if it's B2C, you're probably looking at a lot of social media. You're looking at organics like your website, SEO, word of mouth. Whether if you're B2B, then it's going to be partnerships. It's going to be, doing a lot of research on LinkedIn, find similar companies, so on and so forth. But I think the bottom line here is the foundation remains the same for whether you're B2B or B2C. And then the last couple of steps in terms of tailoring your outreach, that's where the differentiation is going to come in.
I would agree with Mina, which is I would say that everything is B2P. You've heard that, business to person. No matter what you're talking about, there's a person at the end of the line. And you do the exact same things. You're engaging, you're authentic, you're solving their need, you're talking to them. And then it's, where is your audience, right? And that's what you're saying, Mina. Some audiences for B2B are on LinkedIn, but they're also on Twitter, as is B2C. So if you think of it as business to person and follow those rules, I think you're going to win.
So valid points. Warren, we've got 2 minutes.
Yep. What I would add, though, is that in B2B, there is not always a single decision maker. Yes, sometimes it's and many times it's essentially a committee. Each person has a different set of motivations. You know, if some guy's in accounting, you know, he's got a different motivation than someone who evaluates the technology and someone who's actually the end user. Everyone's at a different place. So that goes back to Mina's point, where you really need to have a very complete set of messages and understand the market very, very well, because you're going to need to address the individual needs of everyone in the buying process.
No doubt about it. And I think B2C has that same issue too, depending on what the situation is. So if you're doing large ticket items, there are more than one decision makers in a family sometimes, right? And unless it's just, I'm buying a piece of gum, right? A lot of consumer products involve multiple decision makers too. So I think you have to address that B2C, B2B, everything. Make sure you're handling all the stakeholders and decision makers and influencers in the decision.
Thank you. That's what we call the purchasing decision unit, right? That not always is one individual, but it's different persons, and we should know really good and understand the motivations of the full purchasing decision unit.
Yeah, and to add to that real quick, you know, sometimes there's one person or maybe two that are really for your idea.
You have 1 minute, sorry, because we have to cut and have to jump into another call.
Got it.
You have 1 minute,
so
sorry.
find who your champion is and really go with that person. Find the person that's going to really talk and push for you, and work with them.
Great points. Find your champion. With this message, we leave today our live stream, our very first live stream at Growth Seeker. We wait for all our viewers next week. And thank you so much. Huge thanks to all our guests today and to the viewers, our audience today. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Warren. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Jesus. Thank you so much, Mina. And thank you, Rebecca. It was very nice to have you all here today sharing experiences. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be looking forward for your feedback on how to improve, because I think we can make it a little bit more dynamic and more funny for all of us. So I'll be looking forward for your feedback, guys. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Adios.